The red ink continues to spill across Canada as more provincial budgets reveal sizable deficits and lay bare the financial damage from global uncertainty. In Saskatchewan's previous budget, it planned a surplus of $12 million for the last year, but the new budget flips that to a shortfall of $1.2 billion. The province is also planning a deficit next year of over $800 million, and that's still smaller than the other deficits we're seeing, like $13 billion in BC, $9 billion in Alberta, and just yesterday, Quebec said its shortfall would be almost $10 billion. Joining me now is Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan. Nice to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you as well, JP.
So before we dig into your budget, let's talk about Iran. Of course, the Middle East conflict is throwing the oil and gas market into turmoil. Oil is around $100 a barrel. Qatar, the world's largest gas supplier, just lost nearly a fifth of its LNG capacity because of an Iranian airstrike. Your province produces both fossil fuels. Given all of this global uncertainty, is there, frankly, an opportunity here for Saskatchewan and Canada?
Well, and I would add fertilizer to that list as well. There's some fertilizer that comes out of that area. And so it can affect not only energy security globally, but food security to some degree as well by increasing the cost of fertilizer. And yes, we're a producer of all of that. And so in the short term, we will see, prices start to climb. But, again, I would just say that over the last half a dozen years, we've seen very erratic pricing in particular the oil market due to geopolitical occurrences that have happened. Back 6 years ago, in the early days of the pandemic, we saw oil at negative $7.50. I didn't think that was even possible, but it did hit negative $7.50. The first few months of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it was quite the opposite. It really spiked quite highly. And we're seeing that same spike due to the location of the conflict that we see in Iran and the Straits of Hormuz. And so, it is going to be erratic, and I think adds to the global uncertainty, the trade wars, the tariff conversations, and it's just one more layer of uncertainty that I think the world is dealing with at this point in time.
There may be an opportunity, though, because we heard from the CEO of the pipeline giant TC Energy, Francois Poirier. He was raising some concerns this week about Prime Minister Mark Carney's major projects office. He says the federal permitting is just still too slow. Things like this should be done within 6 months is what his position is. And then Canada could maybe capitalize on some of this extreme global energy demand that we're seeing at this time. How would you rate the Prime Minister's performance so far on this issue?
It's a changing conversation for where it has been the last 10 years, and that's good. But it does need to be quicker, and the tighter timeframes for not only egress capacity, pipeline conversations, but actually how we're going to increase our production capacity as Canadians as well. The best time to do that was a number of years ago, but today's the second best time, and we need to move quickly in this space. We in Saskatchewan have, long prided ourselves on being a provider of food security for many countries around the world, and energy security, not only in oil, but other items like uranium, coming lithium, rare earth elements and such. But we can, as Canadians, truly be a global energy supplier, providing some of the most sustainable oil and gas that you can find on Earth, to be a part of that energy security supply chain for so many countries. If we can just be committed to the timeframes for approvals for the production facilities as well as the egress facilities to get, in our case, getting more energy to the west coast of our nation. It would be a great service to the world, and I believe economically a tremendous boost for Canadians.
Okay, let's talk about the budget. So last year you expected a very modest surplus. That didn't come together. Now you're projecting a budget deficit of about $800 million for this fiscal year, and there's no plan to return to a balanced budget this decade. What is going on with the finances?
Yeah, well, there is, challenges, I think, in fairness, at the provincial budgetary level across the nation. And we've, talked about some of our per capita deficit, and it is lower than other provinces that we're seeing. We have a plan to balance by 2030. However, in saying that, there are many, many uncertainties at the provincial level, and Saskatchewan is not immune to those uncertainties that we're seeing across Canada. There's pressures both ways. We mentioned the oil price, fertilizer prices that may be up hard on agriculture, probably more positive for mining in the short term. But there's also a number of other pressures that we have with a fluctuating dollar, things of that nature, and that is not just on the Saskatchewan budget, but all provincial budgets moving forward. So it just that uncertainty globally, the tariff-riddled conversations that we're seeing, the supply chain interruptions that we're seeing are definitely resulting in some uncertainty and some challenges in the revenue lines at the provincial level, and I would say even at the national level as well. What we've chosen to do is run a modest deficit this year, more than we'd like to, but protect the services that Saskatchewan people are very much expect their provincial government to be investing in, and primary among those is healthcare.
As you say, it's not just your province. The books are awash in red seemingly everywhere in the country. We had New Brunswick's finance minister on this week. He was telling me that he really thinks there's actually a crisis in provincial finances and that Ottawa might have to step in. Is that how you see it? Do you think the country is on a sustainable fiscal trajectory right now?
Well, I will speak from Saskatchewan's perspective, and we traditionally are not a fan of Ottawa stepping in any way. They generally seem to, by tradition, and then we are, moving with the federal government wherever we can, but they don't normally help getting, enhancing the economic opportunities that we're trying to capitalize on. What we need to do is work alongside our federal government, our industries, as we talked earlier, accelerating the timelines to develop the industries that are creating jobs and wealth, not just at the provincial government level, but at the community and family level, creating those careers. We've worked hard at that in Saskatchewan. In fact, today, we have 60 major projects on the books. 2 of the 3 largest projects ever built in Canada are located in Saskatchewan, 1 mine, 1 data center. Those 60 projects represent over $62 billion of investment. That's unlike any time in our province's history, and currently is very much unlike, in particular on a per capita basis, any other province across the nation. And so we need to work harder and work more closely across provinces and with our federal government to be that place where the global industries want to invest and create those jobs and opportunity and economic opportunity for provinces and people, Canadians, moving forward.
As you mentioned, there's not really deep cuts in this budget, but you're still facing some heat from the opposition, as you'd expect. The NDP leader there, Carla Beck, says that there's nothing in here for folks who are grappling with the cost of living crunch. There are some hikes to some fees, power rates, insurance deductibles. What do you say to working people who are struggling to get by and who look at your budget and say, not a lot in here for me right now?
It was actually incorrect, but notwithstanding the fact that we families in Saskatchewan are facing inflationary pressures like all Canadians are across the nation, and in many cases global citizens as well. But we had an election a year and a half ago. That election was largely ran on affordability in our province, and we pride ourselves as being one of the most affordable places in Canada to live. The entire platform that we had put forward was based on affordability measures, adding in about $500 million annually of affordability measures, making Saskatchewan, for instance, the jurisdiction where we have the highest threshold before anyone pays provincial income tax. In fact, about 10 to 15% of our population as a whole doesn't pay any provincial income tax at all. And so we've worked, hard to ensure that Saskatchewan will remain affordable for families that live here and may want to move here into the future. But that being said, we as Canadians in this province are feeling the inflationary challenges that, whether it be at the gas pump or at the grocery store, that we're feeling across this country and in many cases, like I say, around the world.
So I was with you in India when Cameco cut that deal on uranium. The Prime Minister's negotiations with China have also delivered some early results for Saskatchewan farmers, particularly those, of course, in canola. But as you know, there's that one major outstanding trade issue, the one with the Americans. And U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer this week is engaged with the Mexicans. He's negotiating with them bilaterally. He says Canada is lagging behind. Are you worried about the progress that's been made so far, or lack of progress, frankly, with the Americans on getting CUSMA reviewed and done with?
Yeah, I have a lot of concern with respect to the CUSMA deal and where we are going to find our way on that in the next while. And it needs to really be all, all of our talents and all of our efforts, whether that be provincially supporting the federal government in that negotiation or engaging ourselves directly with the U.S. administration, of which we have done for over a decade or close to 2 decades now as a provincial government as well. That this is our largest trading partner, even Saskatchewan, which is, largely as diversified or likely more diversified than any province with our exports around the world. We still trade with the U.S. In a much greater fashion than any other country by multiple times, and it's imperative that we have a long-term free and fair trade agreement with the United States. And I would say it's equally important for the Americans as well, as our economy, truthfully, in many sectors is very integrated across that 49th parallel. It's integrated for a reason, to be as efficient as we can in providing, not just Canadian or American food and energy security, but providing that North American energy and food security so that we can be economically secure and ultimately deliver on commitments that we see with respect to, increasing our military spend and ensuring that we are two sovereign nations sharing one continent, not just this year, but for years and decades and centuries into the future.
All right, let's leave it there. Scott Moe, Premier of Saskatchewan. Nice to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Always great to see you, and it was great to spend some time with you in India.